Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now, Eddie Hearn has explained that Anthony Joshua will not make the same mistakes in sparring that he has done in the past, specifically against Andy Ruiz Jr., specifically that first fight. Now, in the rematch with Ruiz, Anthony Joshua apparently, according to Eddie Hearn, got the sparring spot on. Smaller opponents, fast, and reasonably good movers for their size. And one of the sparring partners we do know was Timothy Mottin. I think that he might have been Anthony Joshua's chief sparring partner during the camp for Ruiz too. So obviously he got it right in the rematch. And in the first fight, it was not his fault because he had a late replacement. Jarrell Miller got popped. So ultimately, Andy Ruiz Jr. had to come in, meaning that sparring had to change a lot because Anthony Joshua was preparing for a tall 6'4", meaty Jarrell Miller, who's big and strong and really physically imposing, whereas Andy Ruiz Jr. is a little bit smaller. I mean, similar kind of weight, but ultimately Ruiz is a lot faster than Jarrell Miller. Also, Ruiz is incredibly fast, powerful, and a good boxer without the PEDs. Jarrell Miller needs them. So ultimately, Andy Ruiz Jr. was an all-round better fighter than Jarrell Miller, and the sparring needed to replicate that. And for the first fight, it was never going to, especially at the late notice. Whereas against Kubrat Pulev, Anthony Joshua's next fight, things will be different. Eddie Hearn has explained that Anthony Joshua has got this right. For Pulev, he has got the right sparring partners that will be coming in to help him prepare for Kubrat Pulev, which is great because he does need a tall stand-up fighter who is technically sound. I believe Dominic Brazil was mentioned, and obviously in his last fight, he got ironed out by Wilder in one round, but still, he does have that kind of stand-up style, quite tall, good power as well, so he can replicate the style of Kubrat Pulev. He's never going to be as good as Pulev, but still, it's sparring. You're never going to get a complete carbon copy of the guy you're going to be fighting, so you have to kind of mix and match, maybe find different attributes from different fighters. The height from Dominic Brazil, maybe the stand-up style as well. Then go and find a fighter who is technically very good, has a good jab, has a good right hand as well. And then you start building the picture of the person you're going to be fighting, Kubrat Pulev. So ultimately that is what Anthony Joshua will be doing, finding different attributes that Kubrat Pulev has in sparring partners. That is why they have more than one. Now, Eddie Hearn did explain that Anthony Joshua will start his training camp in a couple of weeks in Sheffield. Maybe in September. So obviously he's going to be starting in September, meaning that you have September, October, November, then the first 2 weeks in December is when Anthony Joshua will be fighting. I've said previously in videos that as soon as Anthony Joshua starts his camp, give it 3 months, and then that is when he will be fighting. And that seems about right because Eddie Hearn also explained that they are looking at the first 2 Saturdays in December. So that kind of matches up when Anthony Joshua starts training camp and when the fight will be. What is also interesting is Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury 3 is touted to possibly happen on the 18th of December, the 3rd week in December. So Anthony Joshua might be fighting 2 weeks or maybe even 1 week before those 2 fights. So it would be kind of interesting to see how that works out. Obviously Anthony Joshua fighting just 1 week or 2 weeks before Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury 3. Maybe that will take away some pay-per-view numbers from them. But ultimately, that's not the plan. The plan is to keep Anthony Joshua active, to make sure that he fights at least once this year. Because by the time Anthony Joshua gets into the ring, he will have been out of the ring for a full year. And that's kind of crazy considering where he is in his career. He's peaking now. But it cannot be helped because obviously there have been situations that no one could foresee and no one can really get around until December comes. Whether it's in front of a crowd, we don't know at the moment. I believe it will be behind closed doors, and I think that Eddie Hearn is planning for it to be behind closed doors as well. And going back to the sparring, I don't know how they're going to bring in different sparring partners and whether that will be legal at the moment because obviously travel is a bit of a stigma at the moment. We don't know what is going to happen with it and whether fighters from America or Europe can come over and help Anthony Joshua train. He might have to use fighters who are located within the UK. We don't know just yet, but it was interesting to see how Dominic Breazeale's name was mentioned, and he's in America, so ultimately maybe that was just something that Eddie Hearn just said on a whim and said that maybe that's a style that kind of replicates Kubrat Pulev and a similar style, and it kind of is. So maybe that was just an example and they are not necessarily planning on bringing Dominic Breazeale in to Anthony Joshua's training camp for Pulev. But Eddie Hearn did explain that sparring will be spot on for Kubrat Pulev, so I would imagine that they have already some names on a list that they are planning on bringing in to training camp, and that's a positive thing because obviously they would have already fought if things had gone to plan. Obviously it was June 20th that they were supposed to be fighting, so ultimately that date has been long gone, so they would have fought already, so there must have been a plan in place for sparring partners and training for Anthony Joshua. I don't believe he even started training camp for Pulev when lockdown happened, so I mean there has been plenty of time for them to do some planning. And the interesting thing is a challenger knows who they are going to be fighting. Kubrat Pulev has been high in the IBF rankings for a while now, and he had that eliminator with Hughie Fury. So ultimately he's known that he is going to be fighting Anthony Joshua eventually. So obviously he's had that opportunity to sort of plan, whereas Anthony Joshua knows that he was fighting Ruiz, then Ruiz again, obviously to regain his belts. Then he has to fight Kubrat Pulev, but also after that, he has to fight Alexander Usyk, who is also getting ready for Anthony Joshua because he knows he's going to be fighting him. But he has to fight Derek Chisora, so I guess he will kind of get in the way of that a little bit. Obviously, he's not going to be preparing for Anthony Joshua in a camp for Derek Chisora. Obviously not, but ultimately, Alexander Usyk knows he is going to be fighting Anthony Joshua eventually, as long as he gets through Derek Chisora, obviously, and that's no given. But ultimately, he knows who he is headed towards. Anthony Joshua has these different challengers and voluntaries and mandatories. He does not know who he is going to be fighting until maybe 3 or 4 months before the fight, maybe a little bit more than that, but still, the opponent always has more time to prepare for the champion than the champion has to prepare for their challenger. And it's the same case for Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev. So maybe having a bit more time to prepare for Pulev will benefit Anthony Joshua, and it's not necessarily like he needs that. He doesn't need more time for Pulev because Pulev is this world beater, but Pulev is a good fighter. Pulev, if Anthony Joshua is not on form at his best, will take advantage of that. Pulev is a good fighter, well schooled, good amateur pedigree, good in the pros as well. One sole defeat coming from a prime Vladimir Klitschko. This guy is not playing around. He is coming to win. And Andy Ruiz Jr. is living proof that there are challengers out there who are waiting patiently for a champion to maybe take their eye off the ball. Kubrat Pulev is no different from that. So sparring and everything else involved with the training camp must be on point against any challenger, whether you believe they are a world beater or whether you believe they are just another challenger. Kubrat Pulev, I believe, is a good fighter, and I believe that he will give Anthony Joshua a good fight. I think that we will see a good fight here. I think that this could be one of the best performances from Anthony Joshua. Explosive, but educated. I believe that Anthony Joshua is better now than he ever has been. We do know that he is packing on a little bit more weight for the Kubrat Pulev fight, meaning that maybe he's going to try and stand there and trade a bit more with Pulev, but not silly, not standing there with his chin up in the air, trading with Pulev. He doesn't need to do that. He can easily outbox Kubrat Pulev. But ultimately, I believe that Anthony Joshua is looking to get back to basics. Go in there and knock Kubrat Pulev out. Do what he does best. Get his knockout streak back again. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? Anthony Joshua will be sparring a lot better for Kubrat Pulev than he did in the first Andy Ruiz Jr. fight. Sparring is vital, and Eddie Hearn has explained already that sparring will be on point for AJ's camp against Kubrat Pulev. They already have that sorted out. Anyway, guys, drop your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe if you are new. Thanks, guys.